Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's virtual PNR meeting. Before moving to the agenda, as usual, I need to run through various points of procedure regarding virtual planning meetings. Today's meeting is being held under the virtual meetings regulations using Microsoft Teams. All committee decisions will be as valid as decisions made at a standard meeting in the town hall. Today's meeting is being streamed live on the internet, and a recorded version will be on the council's website within 48 hours. As chairman, I can confirm public written statements will be read out by North Somerset Council officers. Members of the planning committee consists of 13 members, adjusted to accord with political balance agreed by all the group leaders and the chief executive. Members, please remember to use the chat function. And please remember to mute your audio when not speaking. If members are joining the meeting by telephone, ensure they are muted by pressing *6 when not speaking. Press *6 again to unmute. Please ensure the chairman is aware you are leaving the meeting in regard to a declared disclosable pecuniary interest. Compliance is essential to comply with the law. You will be invited back into the meeting by an officer following determination of the agenda item. Voting procedure. Please use the chat function when proposing and seconding a motion. State clearly what you are moving. This will aid the general public following the planning process online. Voting on applications will be carried out by roll call. The legal officer will call each councillor's name in alphabetical order. The vote will be taken on the basis that you have heard the full debate on the application. Please state if your vote is for the motion or against the motion, or you wish to abstain. This will ensure the vote is correctly recorded. Voting on matters of procedure, such as confirmation of the minutes, will be of a different format. Using the chat function, I will ask members if they wish to vote against the motion. Then I will ask if any members wish to abstain. All remaining members will then be taken on block as voting for the motion. Please ensure all mobiles are switched off and your IT devices are muted. Hazel, please can you undertake the roll call for today's meeting?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Bryant. Councillor Cherry.
Here. Present.
Councillor Cole.
Present.
Councillor Crewe.
Here.
Councillor Crockford Hawley.
Present.
Councillor Cronolly.
Here.
Councillor Leigh Morgan.
Here.
Councillor Parker. Councillor Payne.
Yes, here. Good afternoon.
Councillor Shopland.
Yes.
Councillor Solomon.
Present.
Councillor Westwood.
Here.
I've had apologies, Chairman, from Councillor Harley, and it appears that Councillor Bryant and Councillor Parker are not present. For officers, we have Richard Kent, Simon Exley, Roger Wilmot, Andrea English, James Wigmore, Andrew Stevenson, Mike Cole from Development and Environment, Sue Buck, Emma Anderson, Mike Riggle, Michelle Chesterman, Hazel Brinton from Corporate Services. And we have one substitution. I believe Councillor Parker has now joined us, and Councillor Parker is substituting for Councillor McQuillan. That's the roll call completed, Chairman.
Thank you, Hazel. Agenda item 1, public speaking. There are 4 addresses to be read out by officers for today's meeting. The first address relates to agenda item 6. Mr. Jacobus van Blerk is against the proposal and his address will be read out by Michelle Chesterman.
Thank you, Chairman. Currently, there are over 1,075 online objections to this application, not forgetting the 358 written objections, which make up to 35% of the East Ward of Clevedon. The local town council objects, the civic society object, the environmental agency objects. The people want to know what the point is in participating in the planning process and how their voices are respected. The people of Clevedon have informed the council that the location for the school is wrong for many reasons. And these are green belt, loss of public open space, distance from town centre, outside settlement boundary, noise and pollution from the M5, traffic and social impacts. We want to know who makes the decision to go against the council's own regulations in deciding that a community of over 4,551 should lose over 90% of its open space, leaving one of the most deprived communities in North Somerset even more disadvantaged. The social implications of this decision will have a big impact on Clevedon for a long time to come. It is imperative that the information presented to the Planning Committee is accurate and correct, especially if North Somerset Council is the applicant, so that the people who have participated have confidence in the process and don't feel disenfranchised. The council still states local green space has higher protection than green belt, which is incorrect. The council still states that the land is 2 hectares when it is less than 1.8 hectares, including the trees and hedgerows. The facts are important because in the sifting process, all land smaller than 2 hectares was discounted. Distance to town centre is 1.2 kilometres, so not walking distance as claimed. There are no amenities in walking distance from Brookfield Walk. What has happened to the caring council that wants to build healthy communities that encourages the people to explore and enjoy open spaces? A council that refuses to use Mark Cannyford's Plan B on a site that has already had a 210-place school application approved back in 1992. A council that turns down the offer from the MP to work with the council and the school to find a solution to the location and funding problem. If this application gets approved today, when the council has not answered any questions that have been raised, it puts its credibility at stake and gambles that the Secretary of State also ignores the unanswered question. In the formal appropriation process, the council will have to prove that the public open space is no longer needed. With all the evidence presented, how can that be proved? And that's the end of the statement, Chairman.
Thank you. The next address also relates to agenda item 6. Ed Bowen Roberts and Kenton Mee support the proposal, and their address will be read out by Hazel Brinton.
Thank you, Chairman. Baytree School serves children in North Somerset with very profound and complex additional needs, including children who are non-verbal and non-ambulant. This need is growing, with projections indicating significant increases in children with an education, health and care plan in the coming years. The delivery of these plans, increasing the number of school places from 72 to 120 across 2 sites, will ensure that children have access to a learning environment meeting their learning, health and wellbeing needs fully, while remaining part of the North Somerset community. Baytree provides education and support for children with complex needs from age 3 to 19, continuity which is greatly valued by families. These plans enable more children to benefit from this essential support. Baytree is already over capacity, with spaces for September 2021 limited. This will mean further children are either placed in a setting which cannot fully meet their needs or are transported out of North Somerset to receive education. Suitable alternative provision may involve vulnerable children undertaking significant daily travel, e.g. to Bristol or Bridgewater. This has the potential to impact on their education, physical health, emotional health and well-being and family life. Such placements and associated transport also incur considerable costs for the council. The support of a wider community of parents and carers is critical to families of children with complex needs. Local school provision fosters this community and enables this support to continue. Attending a local school enables parents and carers to participate fully in their child's education, something which is challenging if children are educated elsewhere. The plans offer additional potential to deliver therapies and health interventions on site, reducing children's travel and ensuring they spend less time away from school. The plans to build a second site expanding Bay Tree School are widely supported by families and professionals in education, health and social care. The identified location in Clevedon enables Bay Tree to be part of a supportive local community while bringing more children in North Somerset closer to the support they need and ensuring that families in the north of the district can access the same high quality support as those in Weston and Wirral. We would urge you to approve this application and to share in our commitment to meeting the complex needs of these local children and young people. Any further delay in progressing these plans will impact the most vulnerable children in our area greatly. End of statement, Chairman.
Thank you. The next address relates to agenda items 7 and 8. Claire Hillier-Brown supports the proposal and her statement will be read out by Michelle Chesterman.
Thank you. I speak on behalf of the applicant in support of the applications and to address matters raised by members during their site visit made on the 8th of September. The owner of the site has the benefit of the use of the lane, but no legal right to its upkeep. The applicant will use their best endeavours to ascertain the legal ownership of the service yard to enable discussions with respect to tarmacking part or all of the access road. The trees identified at the members' site visit are self-seeded and outside the applicant's red line boundary. Officers have not raised this as an issue during the extensive application process. The applicant's architect has reviewed the potential to further reduce the ridge height of plot 4. Currently, in the position of plot 4 are 2 sheds of no architectural quality, one having a ridge height of 19.030 and a larger one having a ridge height of 21.18. Both sheds will be removed if consent is granted and plot 4 will be constructed in broadly the same location but with a smaller footprint. The maximum height of plot 4 will be 19.030, that is to say, to match the lower of the ridge heights of the existing buildings in that location. The situation, if anything, will remain as currently experienced. The proposed development will connect to the existing drainage features within the lane. The drains, once constructed, will be adopted. The result of the ongoing engagement with officers is a well-conceived, spacious scheme of high architectural quality, which creates a net enhancement, respects the conservation area, listed buildings and neighbouring dwellings. The proposal does not constitute overdevelopment. Access and parking arrangements marked out prior to the member's site visit are considered acceptable by officers. Whilst no evidence of bats used in the buildings was found, a recommendation for avoiding impact on bats has been identified and includes the buildings with low suitability being demolished under an ecological watching brief in the presence of a licensed ecologist. A condition is proposed requiring bird and bat box features to be installed in each of the proposed dwellings prior to occupation. The officer recommends the applications be approved subject to conditions after 2 years of the applicant actively working with officers, and we therefore urge members to grant consent. And that's the end of the statement, Chairman.
Thank you. The last address relates to agenda item 9. Julia Kendrick is against the proposal and her statement will be read out by Hazel Brinton.
Thank you, Chairman. The main objection to the planning concerns the demography of the area of Clarence Park. In the immediate roads surrounding both of the parks are a number of care and nursing homes for the elderly. Properties in between are, in the majority, occupied by the retired. There is also a large Pegasus Court property and Clarence House, both occupied by able-bodied elderly residents. This area is very unique to other areas of Weston-super-Mare in having a very high population of vulnerable residents. Both parks are visited daily and enjoyed by these residents and by visiting families with young children. The application to turn number 15 into an HRMO with 10 rooms for assisted drug and alcohol people is not suitable for this area. The Clarence Park vulnerable residents are concerned for their safety, property and the park. There is also a possibility that the park could easily attract small groups of drug or alcohol-assisted people. This is already happening in other parts of the town and would certainly detract from the everyday enjoyment of residents using the park. One local resident was personally attacked by an assisted person in Whitecross Road, even though a carer was with the assisted person concerned at the time. This resident is obviously very concerned over the planning application, and all residents have commented that they would not hesitate in calling in the police should any issues arise from this planning application being approved. Residents have also voiced concerns over the parking, one area which was defined as not being an issue during the application process. There has been a natural increase of cars in Clarence Road East over the last few years, and what with the doctor's surgery now being a new care home for mentally and psychologically assisted, there will be staff cars as well as visitors' cars. This will be the same for number 15. In fact, it could result in an increase alone of 10 cars for the number 15 property. There is only space for 3 cars at this actual property, so this would result in parking issues. Another resident has voiced their favouritism has played a part in this application. Finally, as part of the planning objection comments raised, and in summary, if due diligence has been actioned for the demographics of the immediate surrounding Clarence Park areas, the committee can only conclude that this area is just not deemed suitable for an HRMO for drug and alcohol assisted residents. End of statement, Chairman.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chairman, the Head of Legal and Democratic Services has received apologies on behalf of Councillor Harley. We have also been notified of a substitution by Councillor Ian Parker for Councillor McQuillan, and Councillor Shopland has replaced Councillor Bridger. They are both part of PNR in any circumstance.
Thank you. Item 3, declaration of disclosable peculiar interests. No comments, Michelle?
Nothing in chat, Chairman.
Okay. Item 4, minutes to approve as a correct record. Any comments? Councillor Shopland.
Mr. Chairman, at the last meeting, I raised the question of had all the evidence been made available, and I received an answer. I think that should have been noted and appear on the minutes, because that was an important part of the debate. It will be the important part should anyone go to law on it, and it should be noted. And I also make a complaint comparing the minutes now as to what they used to be. They are terrible because they give no indication of how any decision is reached. We are given the blunt fact of a decision. I'm not saying that everyone should be quoted, but there should be a summary of the arguments for and against, so that people in the future and at present can ascertain how the decision was arrived at.
Sue or Richard, do you wish to comment on those comments?
Chairman, yes, if I may, the minutes follow the normal council style, which we've followed for many years now, where we don't produce in detail any summary of the discussion. It is a conclusion on the decision that was made, and that's why the minutes say as they say. Obviously, the meetings are now available online, so people can go back and watch the full recording if they so wish. I think that's probably all I need to say on that, Chairman. Thank you.
I have one more question, Mr. Chairman, then I'll leave it. How long do the minutes remain online? Can I look for them in 20 years' time?
Ooh,
Chairman,
Richard.
Chairman, they are archived, and I think they certainly go back some time. I can't remember if they go back 20 years, but they certainly go back a significant number of years.
Okay, and there is archived material from this council, I gather, that can't be found, but we'll leave that alone, all right?
Michelle, any other comments?
No other comments in chat, Chairman.
Okay. Are there any members voting against the motion?
Yeah, Councillor Shotland.
Okay. Are there any members wishing to abstain?
Nothing in chat, Chairman.
Then all remaining members en bloc support the motion, and that's carried. Thank you. Item 5, matters referred by Council, the Executive, other committees. There are none. Item 6, application 20/P/0605/R3, 85 place specialist school at Brookfield Walk, Clevedon. Before I invite the planning officer to outline the application, I just need to point out that if committee approves the officer's report, then the application is referred to the Secretary of State for final determination. And of course, if committee refused the application, the decision is held over until next planning meeting. Roger.
Good afternoon, Chairman. The proposal for the new campus for Baytree School is for a proposal for 65 to 85 places for children, comprising 11 classrooms and various associated facilities. So to start by identifying where we're referring to, you'll see on the plan in front of you there is a red line around the site, and to identify that location, to the top left above that you see Brookfield Walk, and that goes slightly further down to the bottom left hand side of the page along Kelting Grove. Brookfield Walk itself goes to the top left hand corner of the plan where it meets Northern Way. To the bottom right of the site you can see the commercial and industrial units at Hither Green, and to the right of the red outline you will see the motorway and the northbound on Slip Road, and between the site and that Slip Road is the Millennium Orchard. Next slide, please. Okay, an aerial photograph of fairly much that same planned location, just perhaps a slightly wider context on here. Again, you'll see the motorway and the relationship to the Hither Green units. You'll also see the framework of hedgerows and trees around the site, and as I say, down to the bottom of the site you'll see the Millennium Orchard. The Greenbelt boundary, just to be clear on this, follows the rear of the houses in Brookfield Walk, then encompasses the application site itself. It is then bounded by the Hither Green units and back up alongside the motorway. So in essence this is a sort of projecting finger of the Greenbelt, which, as you see in the report, we've drawn attention to because we felt that is a relevant consideration in relation to how much the proposal affects the openness of the Greenbelt and its purpose in this particular location. Next slide, please. This is a more detailed plan showing the layout of the proposed site and the footprint of the proposed building, which, as you'll see, is quite a complex footprint to it. It has many sort of facets to it. Perhaps picking out just the sort of some of the most important points, there are two particular trees within the centre towards the front of the site, which are being retained and will form a focal point at the entrance to the building. Just slightly to the above and slightly to the left of that, there's the proposed parking area, which is proposed to accommodate minibuses, and to the left of that you'll see the single access point which comes off onto Kelting Grove, close to the junction with Brookfield Walk. Down the left-hand side, there's a retained path to the Millennium Orchard, and various outside facilities are located around the building, which include outdoor play facilities and various elements of retained and proposed planting. Next, please. Again, I think these are probably not particularly easy to read as elevations. As I said, it's quite a complex shape to the building, and therefore it's quite difficult to capture those all on a single elevation. I think probably the important point to draw from these particular elevations, which attempt to show the whole building, is that it is a very low profile building that will sit in the landscape and have very limited effect in terms of the impact on neighbours from a visual point of view. Next slide, please. This is just a slightly more detailed indication of the elevations, just so you can gauge an impression of the use of the mix of materials, which includes brickwork and profiled metal cladding. Other than that, they show really quite limited sections of each part of the elevation. There are a number of those sheets which are required to show each of those. Next slide, please. Finally, in terms of the plans, this is just one showing the context of the building within the site and the periphery, which is contained by existing and proposed vegetation, and there are a number of planting beds within the site that are very much with the objective of trying to ensure that there's a pleasant environment within the school site for users of that. If it's appropriate, then I'll just run very quickly through the update sheet as well. So there are a number of things to draw to. So the update sheet covers some further updates in terms of the noise and air quality. Our recommendation remains the same in terms of that. It still requires some further detailing, and possibly some consequential amendments may be required to that in terms of detail. As a result of those additional pieces of information, we proposed 2 additional conditions on the update sheet. There are a couple of points of clarification that I probably need to mention also that aren't covered on the update sheet. One relates to the transport issues, which, just as a point of clarification, I think the report suggests that at Kelting Grove, Brookfield Walk, the junction there, that there would be a change of priorities. That is not actually the case. The priorities will remain the same, but the road markings will be refreshed, and that does affect slightly used in condition 6 ultimately to approve the application. I've also noted that there were 2 small points contained within the report which unfortunately had not been carried through into the conditions, so there will need either to be an additional condition or an amendment to one of the existing ones relating to the management of the car park. And secondly, in connection with the flood warning evacuation plan, because that the intention was in the report to indicate that that would need to be an update to that would need to be secured by condition. The final change that I need to mention that's not on the update sheet is point C within the prelude to the conditions. Should read that expiry of the consultation period and consideration of any new issues not previously raised.
Thank you. Councillor Shopland.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I hope everyone is sitting comfortably because I can see this is going to be a long session, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, I'm going to move for deferment. But before I do that, I want to make something very plain. Not one of the objectors to the proposal laid before you disputes the need for a school of this sort. Personally, I have children in my immediate family who have benefited from such a school. And my family is very grateful for the care and attention and the services that they had. But we believe that this is not the right site. That is our bone of contention, not the school, the site. And there are other sites more suitable in the ownership of this council. If it goes on, I will bring them forward, but at this moment, no. Mr. Chairman, it has been said there are 451 residents in East Clevedon. Of those, I would say 1,000 are children under school leaving age. There are about 150 children living on this estate, which is isolated from the rest of the town, in the true meaning of the word. And they will be permanently deprived of a facility that is necessary for their welfare and their standard of living. And that will be sacrificed for a school that can be put elsewhere. Mr. Chairman, the decision today cannot be divorced from the decision of the village green because there were discrepancies, I believe, which I will bring forward in a minute, in the facts laid before the committee. If they are proved to be true, then whatever you decide today may fall by the wayside because the village green decision may fall by the wayside. And I will start on that point. The barrister for North Somerset Council reported at the last meeting that the land was held for planning purposes and therefore could not be registered as a public open space. I call it a public open space, it makes it simpler. The solicitor also claimed that the applicants for the village green stated had not responded to or challenged the basis on which the land was held by the council. Now the applicants claim differently, and they say that a comprehensive bundle of information was deposited by the community before the deadline in July. Now there are two opposing facts. Now who is right in this matter? I don't know today. I can't answer that. Most of the evidence confirming the land's POS status is in the council's own files. It includes senior officer statements and letters, copies of minutes, 2 local plans, 1994, 2007. They all confirm its status as public open space. Now, was that information supplied to the barrister? And if so, why didn't he mention it? Again, that is a question that must be answered. And again, I will go a little bit further. In passing, I would note that research, excuse me, on this matter was hindered by the corona bug, or call it what you will, which made it impossible sometimes to get information because the officers weren't available. That's not a criticism, that is a fact. And possibly the timetable was unrealistic. That's an observation. There is also a question mark hanging over the validity, impartiality and integrity of the search for a site. As it has been said, and I think it can be proved, that the site at Brookfield Walk was selected and virtually commissioned before Lichfield started their research. Something which makes a mockery of claims that the council was open-minded in its approach to this matter. And to repeat myself, most of the evidence was in the council's documentation. How much was handed over to the QC and when was the applicant's evidence received? That is important. They say they placed it in the council custody in May. The council say they didn't. That has to be sorted out, Mr. Chairman. That's a material fact. The queries I have raised have legal computations and must be answered before the committee can safely, without prejudice, to be seen to proceed in this matter, because the facts I've raised could invalidate the village green decision and consequently any planning permission you may or may not grant today. These aren't questions that can be answered off the cuff, Mr. Chairman. They require careful consideration and written replies. And in passing, I will note there are other sites locally that can deliver this school. There is a site in Clevedon which has planning permission or had planning permission for a 210 primary school. I'll deal with that later. And that could be delivered before this site is decided. This is going to drag on for a long time, Mr. Chairman. It isn't going to go away today. So what I ask is, Mr. Chairman, that we clear the air and confirm that this council stands for open and transparent handling of all its affairs. And that can only be shown, I believe, in this case by deferring this matter until the answers to those very important questions are answered. Accordingly, Mr. Chairman, I move that this matter be deferred.
Thank you. Before I ask if there's a seconder, Roger, do you want to make any more comments?
Chairman, just before Roger says anything, maybe I can just respond to the point that Councillor Shopland has made, and then perhaps ask Emma Anderson, the solicitor, to comment further. But the important thing is that the Town and Village Green application was decided by the committee at its last meeting. There was a very full report accompanied by a detailed barrister's opinion. And at the end of the day, this is a separate process. This is a planning application which has to be considered on its own planning merits. There is some crossover in that questions of local green space, for example, and greenbelt status are set out in the committee report and are planning matters. But the decision on the Town and Village Green application has been made, and you can't, as we said at the meeting last time, conflate the two cases. Emma, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Thank you, Richard. I'll just give you a quick run through of the dates, if that does assist. In relation to the main consultation on the Village Green, that took place between the 29th of October and the 20th of December 2019. So that was prior to the coronavirus lockdown. In terms of matters that were taken into account, the applicant did submit legal documentation that was provided to Mr. Blowham, and it is referred to in his report. Final comments were sought by the 3rd of July. The applicant did seek an extension of time until the 13th of July. All this is contained in the Town Village Green report that was brought to this committee last month. That nothing was received. A final invitation to submit comments by the 17th of July was sent to the applicant. Nothing was received by that date, and there was a short sentence which is included in last month's repeat that was received on the 20th of July. The local authority did receive some additional comments made not by the applicant, by somebody else. They were received on the 18th of August. So that was some 6 weeks after the original deadline. Those were not taken into account, having regard that they were received long after the deadline and just the day before the meeting of the committee on the 19th of August.
Thank you. Councillor Shopland has proposed deferment. Is there a seconder?
Chair, Councillor Crewe has asked. I think Councillor Crewe wants to speak. He has his hand up.
Councillor Crewe. Councillor Crewe, are you seconded?
Listed Councillor Shopland is a local member. I'm inclined to support deferment. I'm willing to second that. There is obviously some answers needed to this, regardless of what we're hearing. If members of the public think we haven't done all the things we need to on this matter, the sake of deferment for 1 month to sort those problems out and give a sensible answer makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, we may find we drag on and on through wrong reasons. So I'm quite happy to second.
Okay, so can I remind all members we are debating deferment only for the time being. So,
Chairman.
Michelle. Richard Westwood.
Yeah, sorry for butting in. I would speak against deferment. As far as process is concerned, Mark Caniford, the appropriate executive member, identified the site as suitable for the building of the school within our North Somerset Council regulations. I've spoken to our legal team very, very continuously on this matter, and they've assured me we own the land and we have scrupulously gone through the proper processes to open up the site for building this much needed school. As the solicitor pointed out, we bent over backwards pretty much as far as allowing extra time for the applicant as far as the village green is concerned. I don't think we need to carry on any further along that line, and I would be voting and will be voting against deferral.
Thank you. Michelle.
Councillor Cronley is requested to speak as well, Chairman.
Councillor Cronley.
Hi, thank you, Chair. So I'm not going to vote to defer or delay this. With respect, Councillor Shopland and others have had months to advance arguments, and if you believe your arguments are strong enough, bring them forward today. I'm not going to vote to defer this.
Thank you.
Richard Kent is requested to speak, Chairman.
Richard Kent.
Chairman, yes, just a quick point on procedure. I understand the points that are made about Councillor Caniford and other councillors in the build-up to the application, but clearly this decision has to be made as a planning application. You can't have predetermined the application before you got to this meeting. You need to consider it on the planning matters, and the facts are set out in the committee report. So the fact that the council in another capacity may have made decisions is not directly relevant to the consideration of the planning application. I think it's important that we just make that point clear.
Yeah, Chair, sorry, I will partially withdraw that my earlier statement then, but the point I was making was not that it has been predetermined, but purely that this council has gone through the proper procedures in bringing this in front of this committee.
Michelle. Anybody in chat?
No further comments in chat, Chairman.
In which case, Councillor Shopland, do you wish to sum
I
up?
would say very briefly, I do not think, on the evidence that I have, that the proper procedures have been followed to the letter. And I understand that the applicants can prove that the information required was put through the council letterbox on the 16th or 18th of May, well before the deadline in July. Now, those are the questions that have got to be answered. Are they telling the truth? Did anything get lost in the council setup? I don't know. But we have to have all of the facts before us before you can make a decision, because these two decisions run together. The village green and the planning permission are synonymous almost, because one follows the other. So, Mr. Chairman, I still stand for deferment.
So, Councillor Shopman has summed up. The proposal is for deferment. Sue, please conduct the roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I will now take the vote from each councillor in alphabetical order, and for each vote taken, the councillor will be confirming they've heard the whole of the debate, unless they state otherwise. The motion is for deferment. Councillor Cherry.
No.
Is that against deferment, Councillor Cherry? Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Cole.
Against.
Councillor Crew.
For.
Councillor Crockford-Hawley.
Against.
Councillor Cronley.
Against deferment.
Councillor Lane-Morgan.
Against.
Councillor Parker.
Against.
Councillor Payne,
Against.
Councillor Shopland,
For.
Councillor Solomon,
Against.
and Councillor Westwood.
Against.
Councillor Bryant here for the motion.
Sorry, Councillor Bryant, we didn't have you in attendance. Councillor Bryant, you're for the motion. And sorry, could I just go back to Councillor Westwood?
Yeah, I'm against.
Against.
Point of order here, Mr. Chairman. Has Councillor Bryant been in attendance throughout through the start of this debate?
Yes, I certainly have. Every word.
Thank you. Chairman, the votes for deferment are 3 and against deferment are 9.
Thank you. Deferment is clearly lost. So we need another proposal. Vice Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Just 1 second. Vice Chairman.
I would like to speak to the application, but may I give way to Councillor Shopland?
Okay, Councillor Shopland.
Mr. Chairman, I am now going to move for a site visit. Mr. Chairman, this is a matter of great public concern in Clevedon, and many local residents believe that this is an attempt to deprive them of a long-standing piece of public open space, a place where their children can go and play safely without adult supervision. An essential important fact is they are somewhat cut off from the rest of Clevedon's facilities by a very busy arterial ring road. When the North Somerset went out to the public with a questionnaire for consultation, they only asked if the people would support a SEND school, but carefully omitted where it was to be built. Have you been told there were over 1,075 objections to the Losses open space site? There were 358 separate written letters of objection, all confirming that they regularly use the space. That's over 35% of the housing is East Clevedon. The 650 votes that were recorded in favour were supporting the need for a school, not to develop Brookfield Wall. I feel that this level of public interest requires that all of us on the committee see this piece of land, assure the residents that we are taking an interest by noting its relevance to the local people. We then can make an informed decision. I therefore propose that there be a site meeting and that not more than 3 objectors be invited to explain their positions. I will give you the names of the objectors. We don't want a crowd, we don't want howling dogs and kids. We want a sensible view of the site. So I move a site visit, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Richard Kent would like to speak, Chairman.
Richard.
Chairman, if this motion were to go forward, it's only fair that I should say that the rules as they apply to site inspections we spoke about at the last meeting, and they are very tight because of the COVID position, and we would have to do it in a very limited way, and particularly in a site like this encourage councillors to make their own visit if they've not already done so. But it would have to be closed groups, and the prospect of inviting spectators I think would be limited, if at all.
Thank you. Back to the committee. Is there a seconder?
Nothing in chat, Chairman.
So that is lost. Councillor Shopland, do you wish to make another proposal?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that the development be rejected.
Looking for a seconder?
You know, I have to speak to it first, Mr. Chairman, respectfully.
Please carry on. Apologies.
Again, to quote a very old programme, I hope you're all sitting comfortably. I make no apology that it will take a little time to present my case. What I'm going to give you are not opinions, but facts supported by documentation. The facts are taken from a file of over 400 pages of mainly this council's documentation, information which has been in the possession of this council since the 19th of May. And it should have been made available to you before the last meeting when you made a village green decision. You might question why it wasn't laid before you. Did you know that the conveyance map dated the 22nd 11/79, which accompanied the signed conveyance, shows the area as amenity land? That the following senior council officers have confirmed by letter its open space status since 1979. Mr. Vanston, the Chief Planning and Control Officer, Mr. Tate, an Area Planning Officer, Mr. O'Neill, when he was Assistant Property Manager, Mr. Simon Exley, Principal Planning Officer. There are North Area Planning minutes showing it being described as public open space from the Director of Leisure Services. And as I said before, 2 local plans confirm it, 94 and 2007. Now, Mr. Chairman, I've known all of these officers I've mentioned, and I've always considered them to be people of integrity. And I would find it very hard to believe that they didn't know what they were writing when they wrote it. Mr. Chairman, the minimum requirement of public open space in the 2007 development plan is 6 meters square per person. That works out, without getting too much into it, to 6.75 acres for East Clevedon Ward. It hasn't got that. And if it loses 4.9 acres, that will be a disastrous blow to the most populated ward in Clevedon, which also has, or it definitely had, an official area of deprivation. The Chief Planning Officer wrote to the solicitor that there was a shortage of public open space in Clevedon. That was in '94. That situation hasn't changed one iota. We're still short of open space. Now, this is going to take a bit of explaining. I don't really know whether I can explain it to myself, but I will try. The council claims to have taken the POS status from this land in July 2019. So it admits that it was public open space until July 2019 because, quote, we periodically check sites to ensure their correct designation. We remove any no longer designated either as a POS or amenity land. That's incorrect because the site has been continuously acknowledged by the council and confirmed since 1979. And in February 2018, a report of the Planning Inspectorate says that its green belt status gives it significant protection against change. Now, Mr. Chairman, to me it's suspicious that decisions about the future of this site were so quickly made after an application was made for village green status. It was made between the application and the decision. And I would have thought that common sense would have meant that any decision on a change of status should have waited until the village green had been decided. Now we come to the green belt. A finger in the green belt. It's more like a thumb stuck in, I think. It's a bit thicker than a finger. The green belt is the instrument of government's fundamental aim to reduce urban sprawl and keep land permanently open. The essential characteristic of the green belt is its permanence. That's official. That's not my words, that's in documentation. And among the purposes of the green belt are stated, some uses of the land in the green belt are to promote sport and recreation, retain and enhance landscapes and near to where people live, note the near to where people live, secure nature conservation and small areas of open space that provide an important local amenity and offers recreational play and opportunities. Brookfield Walk fulfills all of those. And again, it's very strange in the school planning statement, assessing the plan against the purposes of the Green Belt, those three are left out. They're not in it. And the 5 proposals they quote have little or no bearing on this site. And I will give you 2 examples. Preserving the setting and special character of historic town. I wouldn't say Cleveland was an historic town in the true sense of the word. And equally baffling, to assist in urban regeneration by encouraging the recycling of derelict in other land. That doesn't apply to Brookfield Walk. Have a heart. The removal of land from the Green Belt and granting planning permission is difficult and has to meet certain criteria. It has to be demonstrated as surplus to community requirements. You can't do that in this case. The North Somerset Local Plan 2007 states, planning permission for change of use of land used for community facilities will only be granted where it will not adversely affect community provision. Against, it does adversely affect. And also, in the regulation, somewhere it says that public open space has to be replaced within walking distance. Now you tell me where there's any other public open space within walking distance of this wall. There isn't. Now, if you're still with me, I'll get on a bit further with part 3. The school planning application. As I said before, none of us are opposed to the school. There has to be a school, no problem. Just where? I've mentioned this before, 13 sites were shortlisted. Brookfield Walk selected. So why were Litchfields then asked to carry out a further review of 528 sites had mentioned, or 67? I don't know which, but it's a lot of sites. That was carried out after Brookfield Walk was selected. So who authorised the sheer waste of public money to do that? Or was it an attempt to confuse the public as to the council's intention? I don't know. Site selection. All but one of the shortlisted sites are in private ownership. And perhaps I'm cynical to believe that that was a deliberate ploy to ensure that Brookfield Walk was selected, not for its suitability, but because it costs nothing. This is what people believe. And I would suggest that if this council wishes to retain any credibility in Cleveland, it should look at 3 other local sites that it owns, because they would adequately fill the need, and they are. The St. John's Old School in the centre of the town, a former primary school, which still has its classrooms on ground level. They are still intact. It has adequate parking right in the centre of the town. It belongs to the council, and it is possibly on the market for sale. There's the remains of the Slade Road School in Portset, the field, which is near all of the amenities. That was also scheduled by the last council as being convenient for building. No wonder it wasn't included. And now we come to a contentious site for many, the Pennyfield site in Churchill Avenue. Now, this was selected by Somerset County Council, Avon and Woodspring as a suitable school site near to all amenities. That can be proved. And in August 1992, a plan was passed for a 210-place primary school. The site hasn't altered. It's still there. It would still accommodate that school, which was built elsewhere because they wanted a bigger school. So that site exists and could be, in a sense, developed tomorrow. The council own all of those sites. They will be free mainly from public outcry, and they can speedily be developed to meet the timescale. And they all comply with the key benefits required in the proposed school planning statement. As I said, they belong to the council, they're trying to sell them, so no wonder they weren't included in the list. Perhaps again I'm being cynical. And now we come to the BW side. It's in the green belt with all that problem entails, and it's not going to be quite as simple as saying it's a finger sticking in out from somewhere else. It will be a major confrontation. It's approached from the busiest arterial road in the town. Try and get out of Castlewood between 3:30 to 4:30 or 5 o'clock when these people are leaving school. It's gridlock. Also the proposal, but they haven't mentioned it, they very carefully left it out. The original proposal was to use the community orchard as a playing area for the school. Now that's statutory allotment land, which is owned by another authority, and it's not available. And that piece of land has, and again it's not on your plans, has an unrestricted vehicular access both day and night. That's what it's got. You're also talking about putting a path behind the houses in Brookfield Walk so that they can have a rear entrance to their gardens. And that, I suspect, according to something I've read, is 2 meters wide. Or I talk in English about 8'6". Now that brings the site down probably below the 2 hectares, which I think is approaching 5 acres. The land available actually on plans is 1.7 hectares, and that includes established trees which were planted and have to remain because of previous planning conditions. So the area is less than 1.7 hectares. And against, in all the preambles we've got, nothing under 2 hectares can be considered. Well, are they telling the truth when they say that? Because if they are, this site can't be considered. Now, there are major drainage problems on this site. I'm not going into them. I'm probably the only one left now who knows how it can be drained and how it was drained. But there are major drainage problems. As I've said, there was a compulsory tree planting scheme on the site. Now, there's a lack of car parking for the number of persons to be involved. Because it's 85 children, and on the figures given, that is in a region of 90 staff, plus the visitors and occasional maintenance workers, plus the buses, and something which hasn't been included, plus the visitors using the community orchard, which is a town asset. A community orchard to help you out will fit in with a statutory allotment site because the statutory allotment sites can be used as leisure gardens, but that's getting too complicated. And the residents will object to extra vehicles trying to be parked in the road. They can't even park their own at the moment. And it's alongside a motorway junction with its noise and air pollution. Now figures can prove anything, and the experts will tell you there is no problem because the wind blows straight up instead of blowing straight down. You can't always believe experts. You have to live with it to know. And there is a problem with noise and air pollution. And as I've said, there is no alternative land to be used as a public open space with easy reach of any house on this estate. And far more important to me, there is no room for expansion of this school. I may be wrong, I know it's in the green belt, but when Clevedon Court, which is a little bit across the road, in the top right-hand corner of the plan you had, was given to the National Trust, land was entailed around it that could not be developed to preserve its historic status. So I believe that the only land around it is included in that entailment. I could be wrong, I can't prove it today, but I believe it is. But it's something which would prevent expansion. Now, I've seen the design, and I know I'm old-fashioned and I'm going to get myself into trouble, but that's part of the fun of being a councillor. In my opinion, the proposed buildings look like a continuation of the industrial site. Come and look at the industrial site and see how the buildings differ. They don't. Or it could be a new agricultural development, like they put in Court Lane in Cleveland, an upmarket cowshed, or a modern alternative to a battery hen unit. It's terrible. It's just like a row of garden sheds, like Councillor, can't think of her name now, Councillor Baker's beach huts on the seafront, a row of sheds stuck in the open space. But I will sum up, Mr. Chairman.
If you would.
Yeah, I think I better. I have been told, and I cannot swear to this today, but it can be checked, that the council solicitor dealing with the village green application was also the one dealing with the school application. Now that's not really very assuring to the public that there was no confusion of interest and that their application was dealt with without prejudice. There has been no true and viable consultation in this matter, because we haven't been able to hold council public meetings, and many are not on the internet. But as I've said before, what response there was showed that at least 35% of the houses in Cleveland had occupants who used and enjoyed the area and were opposed to its loss. Now, I've heard lots of figures quoted by this council on public polls, and they have decided on figures less than 100 to take action. This is nearly 1,000, 1,500 people, so it's a poll that has to be taken notice of. And I will say this, and it's been mentioned before, for the first time in my career as a councillor, and it's been a long time, for many people too long, I'll accept that, but we won't worry about that. I'm ashamed to go out and beat the people that I represent, because I've got no answers to the questions they keep asking, which are, what is the point of public consultation and objecting? What is the point of a town council, the environment agency, or the civic society giving an opinion when they are all totally ignored? That's a fact, and we don't like it. There's nothing being proposed. There's no suggestion that they can replace this public open space. It's just written off. Hard luck. Now, the district is preparing a new long-term development plan because we fell out with the minister. Okay. So why wasn't this school delayed until we knew where all the new development was going to be, and then it could have site be selected, which suited everyone in the district?
Councillor Shopland, you've been talking now for about 15 minutes, and
Chairman,
standing order guidance is about 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay. As I say, the people are dismayed. But there is light at the end of the tunnel because I'm coming to the end of it, all right? A North Somerset solicitor, and this is important, dated the 16th of the 3rd, 20, states that the removal of the PRC amenity land will be removed from Brookfield Walk. But it also stated that formal appropriation would only be given after planning permission has been given. Mark that fact. Therefore, at this moment, and until a certificate is issued, the land remains as public open space. The inspector's report states it's got significant protection against change. I believe that the inspector's letter says effectively that the use of this land cannot be changed. That means that we have to vote against the school planning application, as planning permission can never be implemented. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, I move refusal.
Thank you. Richard. Any comments?
Chairman, I'm not sure if Councillor Shotland has a seconder.
Not yet. But do you wish to comment before I ask for a second?
I think we should have his comments and then it might help them make up their minds.
Chairman, I second it. Councillor Bryant.
He's a good chap, that Councillor Bryant. I'm glad he came.
Okay.
Chairman, I'll ask Roger Wilmot to comment on the issues around public open space, but it is set out in the committee report, and I think it was something that was looked at the local plan stage when the site was being considered at that point, and because it was in the green belt, that took precedent. But the particular point I wanted to make was that the reference to legal advice, and it needs to be very clear that different lawyers advise the council as owner and the council as decision maker on the town and village green application. There was completely separate and divided lawyers involved, and similarly on this planning application, it's not been the same lawyer advising on both. So I just want to make that clear, because there might have been some suggestion that undue influence. So that's absolutely not the case. Roger, do you want to comment, please, on the public open space?
Thank you, Richard. Yes, I've not got a lot to sort of add, really, that isn't already stated in the report, but the Millennium Orchard, just for clarification for members, is not affected directly by the proposal, and access will remain to that. So that part of local open space, the local green space, will be maintained, notwithstanding the proposal. I don't think that we've actually suggested at any point during the planning consideration that the open space or the use of that land, whatever that use has been, isn't something that will be missed. I think we accept that. I think all open space is highly valued by local residents. So I don't think we've actually sort of disputed that particular point within the report. I think we've sought to indicate that taking the balance of the overall decisions, we didn't feel that the loss of this particular piece of land to the proposed use would have a significant effect locally in that respect, and I think that's something that you'll need to perhaps form your own judgment on that. I mean, we've been through the various issues associated with the town and village green, and I don't propose to sort of comment any further on that. In terms of its role and its position actually in the green belt, it's not directly a public open space issue, but we have sought to explain why we felt that this particular portion of the green belt land perhaps has somewhat less value than other parts in terms of fulfilling the functions of the green belt designation. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. Michelle.
Nothing more in chat, Chairman.
In which case, Councillor Shopland, do you wish to sum up?
Yeah, very quickly, Mr. Chairman. I like this bit about different lawyers having different opinions, so we choose the one that suits us best. I understand that. Simply. All right. We now come, there's no significant effect. Are you really joking that to take away 5 acres of open space from a community that's virtually cut off from the rest of the town has no sufficient significant effect? Quite frankly, go back to school. I think you're out of your place. And the other thing is that greenbelt land is graded. I don't think so. Greenbelt land is a straightforward designation of land that has to be protected. It's not protected in degrees that I've ever read in any act. I appreciate that some people might try and work it that way, but there's nothing in the Act that says there are various grades of things. So I still move, Mr. Chairman, that you exercise common sense and refuse it, because you can build a school somewhere else a lot quicker than you're going to be able to build this one.
Thank you.
Richard Kent has asked to speak, Chairman.
Richard.
Chairman, so just to be clear before members take the vote, I think what Councillor Shopland has cited as reasons for refusal are, and we would need to just put the words in the right format, but it's loss of public open space contrary to the relevant policies, inappropriate development in the greenbelt contrary to the relevant policies, drainage stroke flooding impact contrary to the relevant policies, and lack of parking. Those are the four topics that I've noted down as the reasons for refusal, which, as I understand Councillor Shopland's motion to be.
Sorry, I got, the chairman told me to hurry up. I'm not very good at hurrying up. So I did leave it out. What I put down was that the land is still public open space amenity land. It's in the green belt and has protected status. The inspectorate said that, I didn't. It's got insufficient parking. It's off a bus route. It's a bad vehicular approach, drainage, noise and pollution, and no alternative provision is suggested or made available. Added to the ones you've got.
Okay, Richard.
We keep 2 inquiries going now.
Thank you.
Right, we have a vote. The proposal is for refusal. Sue, please conduct the roll call vote.
Thank you, Chairman. I will be taking the vote from each councillor in alphabetical order, and for each vote taken, the councillor will be confirming they have heard the whole of the debate unless they state otherwise. The motion is for refusal for the reasons just given by Councillor Shopland. When you say for, it will be for refusal. When you say against, it will be against refusal. Councillor Peter Bryant.
For.
Councillor Cherry.
Against.
Councillor Cole.
Against.
Councillor Crewe.
Against.
Councillor Crockford-Hawley.
Against.
Councillor Cronolly.
Against.
Councillor Leigh Morgan.
Against.
Councillor Parker.
Against.
Councillor Payne.
Against.
Councillor Shopland.
For.
Councillor Solomon.
Against.
Councillor Westwood.
Against.
Chairman, that's 4 for refusal and 10 against refusal.
Thank you. That is clearly lost. So, from the chair, I will move approval of the application, and I'm looking for a seconder.
I'll second that, Chairman.
Thank you. I'll just wait a second for any comments to come in, if there are any.
Do you want me to speak to it, Chairman?
If you like, yep. Please carry on, yep.
Right. I've listened to what Councillor Shopland said. I'll only answer a couple of things there. The 3 alternative places he mentioned that the council owns. One he referred to as St John's Old School. Most people know that as Cleveland Library these days. There you go. The second one is very out of the way and not really suitable with the road network, I would have thought. The third one, Pennyfields, well, that caused a great deal of controversy the last time it was mooted that be built upon. So, like I said, we might be jumping from for what Councillor Shopland would see as the frying pan into the fire if that came up. Anyway, in favour of this proposal, this is a project started by the previous administration of North Somerset Council when former Councillor Jan Banks was the executive member for Children's Services. I must admit my first contact with this site was at a scrutiny committee 18 months ago, Children's Services Scrutiny Committee, when Councillor Shopland accused the council of acting behind closed doors as far as this proposal was concerned. This turned out to refer to the period of purdah relating to the local elections, and as the local member, he'd been told of the proposal before the rest of the council were. So that's acting behind closed doors. Last month, he accused the council of taking actions with this planning proposal, because he referred to it forwardly, proposals that stink. There you go. And this was as chairman of the very council. He mentions. I'll just mention one thing that he brought up as far as the objections are concerned, that there are only 42 car parking spaces. Now, 36 of these are what is known as tandem spaces, which basically means that the staff park their cars one in front of the other when they get to work, knowing that they won't have to shift them until they go home again. And therefore, roughly 78 cars, or precisely 78 cars, can be accommodated on the site. So not quite as dire as Councillor Shopland alluded to. As I've said previously, but I think it bears repetition. This proposal has been gone through scrupulously. This council put it out to consultation last year, if you recall. So I obviously not in the same planning universe as the chairman of the council. Anyway, I will make the case for a positive case for why this special school is needed. Families will not be faced with sending their children or children out of county, experiencing unnecessary travel times which often impact on the entire success of the day ahead of them, including when the children get home, giving them a good chance of a decent day. Secondly, reduced costs to North Somerset Council of provision for young people outside of the county. Now, this is not an insignificant reason why we should build this school. It's been calculated, I think I'm correct in saying, that per annum, at least an extra £100 million, £100 million for education provision will be made available in North Somerset, because at the present time the North Somerset Council is having to spend that kind of money on providing a proper education for children outside of the area. If we don't have to do that, that's a great deal of money that will be available for education provision within North Somerset. That's no small reason why. Also, coming into that, we've got the reduced travel costs of providing the right support for these young people. We won't have to pay that if they're not travelling great distances. We've got an increased provision of suitable support, and this is crucial. Remember, many of these children have life-limiting conditions. They need the resources that will be provided within this school. It's an improvement and an increase in the number of the environment for these young people to achieve the very best they can. It'll reduce stress on families, improving their mental health and well-being. These are some of the most vulnerable children in our society, our local society, and also their families. The stress can be, I assure you, having worked in the sector, the stress on families can be huge. So in a way, we will be supporting keeping families together. We're reducing the pressure on mainstream provision, struggling to meet the needs of the young people in their care. Basically, this will be achieved by this increase in provision. And also, you know, we've got the possibility of being much more flexible with this increased provision. Much more flexible and able to respond to a change in young people's requirements, because we've got the provision on their doorstep. As I say, I'm trying to give the positive impact that will be felt immediately. Just going to the objections, the reasons for some of the objections I find quite illogical. That the pathways will continue to give access to the woodland area once the school is built. The traffic impact, as has been pointed out, is minimal. There will not be hundreds of parents and children adding their impact to the space due to the nature of the school. And finally, I'll just point this one up to people. Would you not prefer a controlled provision in use for 195 days a year with some activity during school holidays, rather than possibly, I don't know, up to 50 or so properties, which could be a very real possibility with the change in regulations this government are proposing? Yeah, I'd just like to say that I look forward to basically, well, I'm seconding this proposal as the chairman has proposed it. But as I say, I think we should, if this was in my ward in Clevedon, I would welcome this. I would welcome this proposal. There you go. Anyway, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, committee.
Thank you.
Richard Kent has asked to speak, Chairman.
Richard.
Chairman, yes, it's only just before before we take the vote, I just want to remind everybody that the decision will be subject to referral to the Secretary of State because of its greenbelt status and flood risk. And we also, as Roger Wilmot said in the introduction, we need to allow for the expiry of the consultation period and take into account any new issues that are received. And I think Roger made that point clear, together with the conditions on the update sheet and the tweaks that Roger Wilmot referred to. Thank you.
Councillor Shopland.
Mr. Chairman, I wouldn't have bothered by hearing my name being mentioned, so I can't resist that. Councillor Westwood is a very lucky chap because he lives in the upper part of the town, which is quite a rarefied atmosphere, and they view things considerably differently to us poor peasants who live in the bottom. All right. He made a great spiel about transport saving costs. That applies to every site that was on the council list because they were all in Somerset. It is not necessarily only applicable, as he seems to imply, to Brookfield Walk. It applied to every site that the council is looked at. He talks about Pennyfields. Yes, there will be some eyebrows raised, but it has planning permission being granted for it. It is on the council's, I won't say secret, but reserved list of we must make some cash by turning it into building, because it's scheduled as a development site for building by the last council. So don't tell me this is something new. It is one of the sites that is more than adequately surrounded by public open space, because that's where most of the public space, playing space, is in Clevedon. No, Mr. Chairman, I think, sadly, I'm glad I'm not on the same planet as he is, because we wouldn't agree very often, so I'm going to leave it at that. Right?
Okay. Michelle, any other Comments?
No further comments in chat, Chairman.
I've nothing else to add. So approval has been moved and seconded. Sue, please conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chairman. Taking the vote in alphabetical order, and for each vote taken, the councillor will be confirming they've heard the whole of the debate unless they state otherwise. The proposal by Councillor Cole is for approval. So when I say for, it will be for approval. Against will be against approval. Councillor Bryant.
Against.
Councillor Cherry.
For.
Councillor Cole.
For.
Councillor Crewe.
For.
Councillor Crockford-Hawley.
For.
Councillor Cronolly.
For.
Councillor Leigh Morgan.
For.
Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Payne.
For.
Councillor Shopland.
Against, and can my name be recorded, please?
I'll just come back to that. Councillor Solomon.
For.
Councillor Westwood.
For.
Chairman, that's 10 for and 2 against. Normally for a recorded vote, there would be the proposer plus 3 in support.
Not if a councillor asks for his name to be recorded. I'm not asking for a recorded note. I'm asking that my name be recorded. That is common practice and is always taking place.
Sorry, Councillor Shopland, I misunderstood your request there.
Okay, that's clearly carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 7, application 19/P/2298/FUL, terrace of 3 dwellings plus 1 detached dwelling at Woodlands Road, Clevedon. Simon.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can draw members' attention to the update sheet. On the update sheet, we have referred to the further information from the applicant, which was referred to in her address to the committee. And we've referred also to amended plans, which I will come on to as part of the presentation. In addition to the committee report, we've received an additional 30 objections to the application, and we've listed those additional issues. And with the number of objections we received, which are referred to in the committee report, that means that a total of 44 objections to the application. Most of the objections which were received and are on the update sheet are similar to those that are in the committee report, so there are no substantive issues. If I can just go through the slides with members to explain it, for those that weren't at the site inspection last week. The red line shows the application site. The access is from Woodlands Road, which is on the right-hand side of the red line. And if we have the next slide, please, Richard. That shows the site. The dotted line is the boundary of the application site. On the right hand side, you can see marked up 9 car parking spaces, which will be on the left hand side of the lane. That will provide all the car parking for the proposed 4 dwellings. Further down on the left hand side, there's a row of 3 plots. The first plot on the left will look across towards a gap between the houses on the other side, and just to the north is a garage, and then it's linked to 2 houses which are joined together, which face north on the corner of the site. And then further to the south, there is a detached dwelling which backs on to a little lane. The little lane on the left hand side is a green lane that goes up at the back of properties that front onto Copse Road. Can we have the next slide, please? This shows the elevations of the proposed 3 terraced houses. As you look at the top left elevation, you can see a doorway just to the right of the first house, and that leads to the detached access to the detached property, which is behind this row of terraced houses. If you look at the floor plan, you'll see they go round the corner, and the elevations show what the proposed houses would look like. Could we have the next slide, please, Richard? This slide shows the detached 4-bedroomed house, which is accessed from the lane. If you look at the top left, which is titled front elevation, that faces onto the small lane at the back of the houses that front onto Copse Road. As you can see from that, there is a wall, and then the roof with 3 roof lights will be higher than the wall level. Over on the right-hand side is the rear elevation, which shows windows that would face into the site and not towards the rear properties that face onto Copse Road. If you look at the cross section that is in the middle on the right-hand side, the small lane at the rear of the houses in Copse Road is on the right-hand side. The roof rises up, and then the 2-storey element will face into the site itself. Could we have the next slide, please? If you look at the drawing on the top right, that shows where the cross sections were taken from that go across the site. The first one is on the cross section on the top left, shows the impact of the elevation of plot 3 on the rear of the properties at number 30 Copse Road, and how that would affect their outlook. This middle cross section will show how the plot 4 will affect 28 Copse Road, and then at the bottom left, that's a cross section of where the car parking and the first house on plot 1 will be provided, and that shows the access road. Can we have the next slide, please? This is the front of the site from Woodland Road. At the moment, the access on the right-hand side goes down the side of the site. It's an unadopted lane over which the applicants have legal right of ownership, and that will provide the main access. The left-hand side, where the van is parked, there would be car parking spaces. The 9 car parking spaces will be over towards the side of the existing building, and would go parallel with the road going down into the site. The white buildings at the back of the van that you can see are rendered, they would be demolished as part of the application. Next slide, please. That's taken from further down the lane. The building on the right-hand side behind the sort of purple flag is a garage building, and there is a commercial building at the end of the lane past the car. And on the right-hand side is a rear yard, service yard servicing the commercial properties that are not connected with this site. Next slide, please. This shows the rear of the site where the lorry is. There would be plot 3 would be where the 2 trees are planted. They are self-seeding and are in the alleyway that runs at the back of the properties in Copse Road. This is the northern corner of the site. Next slide, please. This is the alleyway that runs up at the rear of the properties that front onto Copse Road. There is a sewer that runs down through this alleyway, and that's the slides photos that show the site. If we can go to the next slide, please. That's an impression of the existing arrangements up that alleyway. The houses on the right are the houses that front onto Copse Road, and on the left-hand side is the outline of the existing buildings that are on the site. If we can have the next slide, please. Those existing buildings will be removed and replaced by a house that will be on plot 4, and that shows the impression of the proposed dwelling on plot 4. Particular concern was expressed by objectors to the application from the people who live in Copse Road about the impact of that proposed dwelling on plot 4 on the rear of their properties. Can we go back to the layout plan, please, Richard? If I can just also pick up on one of the additional comments that have been made, thank you, that one of the objections has been made on the grounds that there's a loss of a non-designated heritage asset. I can confirm that there isn't a non-designated heritage asset on this site. Although most of the buildings of the garage look fairly modern, there is an older stone building towards the rear where plot 4 would be. We've asked the conservation officer about that, and she has suggested that we put an additional condition on the planning permission, which would be condition number 23, and that will be to submit a building record survey record of the existing building, and that should be submitted to us, and the applicant has agreed to that. This site is a restricted site. However, there have been a lot of negotiations to come up with a design that is acceptable in terms of its impact on the neighbours, the impact on the listed buildings, the impact on the conservation area, and satisfies the council's requirements in terms of not adversely affecting the neighbours, in terms of overlooking loss of privacy, and also in terms of provision of parking. We consider that all these have been met and the scheme is acceptable. In addition, members should be aware that because the council doesn't have a 5-year land supply of houses, then the council must take into account the impact that would have in making any decision, because there is a presumption that we should grant planning permission if this development is sustainable, and this would be being a brownfield site in the middle of Clevedon, and we have to give great weight to the lack of a 5-year housing land supply. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Cherry.
Thank you very much. As you know, I called it in and I asked for a site meeting. I'm very grateful for the officers for arranging that. And I appreciate that overall there are many, when you look at it in planning terms, there are definitely positives. However, I think if you look at the whole scheme, there are a lot of negatives. And the concern about the residents around the area is that not only is this an infill site which needed to be dealt with very sensitively, it is actually in the heart of the conservation area. And so there are specific things that we need to do. Similarly, the site actually abuts a terrace of listed buildings. And this is why you've received so many letters of opposition, as I have, and the site has recorded. But effectively, what the residents are upset about is that their living conditions are affected by this infill scheme. because I know that currently there's a garage and old buildings on the site, but our duty in a conservation area is to consider how we can seek to repair harm where there's been unsympathetic development. We shouldn't take as a minimum standard the buildings which are already on there. And the design in this infill site has been around the existing garages. So it could have been an opportunity to have a better design. The other thing which is very material is that there is a green lane to the back between this site and separating off the listed buildings on Copse Road. Many of the residents are extremely anxious that there is going to be, that the development is actually going to affect their listed buildings, because they are literally meters from this development. And we can see as well that now that they've put up about the drainage plans, that those were previously missing, and they've only just put them up today. That again is another concern, because within the development they will have to use heavy machinery. The design on the site takes up most of the space, so it looks as if they're going to have to use the public highway, which abuts many homes which will be gravely affected by this development. In fact, they'll be trapped in there. And I think the main objection of the residents is the fact that they are going to be using or adversely possessing the public highway, which is right by the parking spaces on the development. And also, because the levels aren't shown on the actual plan, it's not clear, but it looks like cars, it's not a sustainable design for the parking, because there'll actually be 4 of them will be trapped in, and they are right by the bin area. So removal of bins is going to be almost impossible. On top of this, the fact is that with infill sites in a conservation area, we have to have a special standard of care where we're looking at how the buildings can be sympathetic to the area. And the buildings around this, yes, some of them were garage buildings, but there are also listed buildings which will be affected by this. And there are other Georgian buildings and historic buildings near this site. So ultimately, I would urge the panel to reject this, because I feel that the scheme is still not detailed enough to stop adverse impacts to both the setting of the listed buildings under the Listed Buildings Act, and it's still not sympathetic enough towards the buildings in the conservation area, and it definitely harms the local residents' additions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder?
Councillor Solomon is asked to speak, Chairman.
Councillor Solomon.
Thank you, Chair. I went on this site visit because I think it was important that though I had a look at it, it wasn't very clear on Google. And I think the heritage side of things is a bit of a red herring. All that's there at the moment are some pretty awful garages, and the only bit of heritage I could possibly see was an outside loo at the back, which might have been classed as heritage. The lane at the back, at the moment, all they've got is a huge garage that they're looking out at anyway. So they're not, it's not as if there's a view that they have from those rear windows of the houses along the back. and I noticed that there was probably only one of them that was using the rear view anyway. Two or three of them were blacked out, and I can't see again where it's going to harm their view or their way of life in any way. Again, the parking, I think the way it's been planned, there would be access for the waste carriers to get in and empty without having to move cars. It looks as if the cars would have, all 8 or 9 spaces would have access in or out. The lane itself does need some work. So I think what's being proposed to go there is a lot nicer than what's there at the moment. And okay, we would like to see much nicer designed houses. And if someone else came along, I think with an alternative that was going to put these most fantastic houses up there, that would be fine. But there isn't. So I think what's being proposed is a lot better than what's there, and we gain 4 houses. Thanks. So I would propose that this is approved.
Councillor Shopland.
Chairman, can I speak, please?
Can I bring you in next? Councillor Shopland first.
By all means, Chair. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. He's a very sensible chap, that Councillor Solomon.
Can be.
Must have a relation and you, the Queen of Sheba, because his judgment's pretty good. All right. But going on from that, I've heard some drivel, but the conservation area, there is no common theme in that area. As Councillor Solomon has said, go and look at it. It's almost like the back alleys in the deprived area in the inner city when you go down that lane. On the one side, you have some ancient houses that you can hardly see down in Cox Road, well below this site. You have a concrete block of flats and shops, which are 1960s, which we all know were horrible designs. You've got a pub, or it was a pub, and then you've got that Victorian monstrosity, a Chinese pagoda on the other corner. So you tell me what the common theme is. This is a very good scheme, Mr. Chairman. It will tidy an area. And going to Mr. Exley's alleyway and the green lane, that is a vehicular right of way. I have been down there with a lorry delivering firewood. One day I'll drive a lorry down there again, just for fun. I'm not on the council, right? I will drive a lorry down there because that's a right of way. It's not a green lane, it's a right of way. The site has access to the lane from Woodlands Road, because the bottom building which we're talking about, which they're going to preserve, which is Hugh's old builder's yard, that's the only way in is to go down that lane. That's its right of way. So there is an existing right of way to the houses at the bottom. It's time this decision was made. People have messed this ban about for nearly 3 to 4 years. And a lot of it has been rubbish, and a lot of it has been not malicious, but just being awkward. And it's time this was settled. This is a good scheme. I'm all in favour of it.
Councillor Westwood.
Thank you, Chair. I supported Councillor Cherry in calling the site meeting. I think it was worthwhile. Both Lord Simon and I think it was yourself said it was a very good call for a site meeting because the site is complex. My point with this one, the only objection I've got to it is the lane access, from the side. And as I understand it, and I'd like one of the officers to go through the update sheet that appears to make reference to the willingness on the part of the applicants to consider upgrading or paying for the tarmacking and upgrading of the lane at the side. It's been mentioned already, or mentioned within the report, that the applicant is having to put in drains, which will be adopted as such. I've made some inquiries with our legal team as to whether this council would look kindly upon adopting the lane if it was brought up to scratch by the applicant. And the answer came, yes, we would, if we can find out who owns the lane. And as far as I'm aware, the applicants, well, as I say, I'd like the officer's view on this, but are the applicants indicating that they would try and go some way towards bringing that about?
Yes, they are.
Because I think sorry to push the metaphor, or break the metaphor even, I think that will go a long way to mending fences with at least some of the neighbours anyway.
Simon, do you want to respond?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. If I can start with that last point, this is very difficult because the lane is not in the ownership of the applicant. I understand that the owners of the lane are unknown, and therefore in planning terms, because it's outside the application site, we cannot ask for either a condition or a legal agreement that they undertake works to land which is something over which they have no ownership and control. They've indicated that they would try and make best efforts to do improvements to the lane, but it's not something that we can control as part of the planning application. It is very difficult when you've got this. I've had involvement in private lanes before, and to bring a private lane up to standards for the council to adopt it involves quite a lot of a high cost, but also then you need to know who the owner of the land is, so it can be transferred to the council. And in these cases, we don't know who the owner of the lane is, and that's where part of the problem is, and then the cost to bring it up for adoption. But if I can just come back to some of the other comments that were made by Councillor Cherry, the issue about the planning application, we have looked at all the issues that have been raised in considerable detail. We've had to make judgments. We consider that the impact on the conservation area is not unacceptable. It is acceptable, and that's explained in the committee report. As well as the highway access, we're satisfied that the arrangements work, the arrangements to access the parking spaces. There are levels on the drawings which show how they will be able to get in and out and to get to the bin store. The car parking spaces are near the entrance to the site and from Woodfield Road, and that means that the cars don't have to go up and down the whole length of the lane. So as I said, it is a brownfield site, it's an infill site. They are always difficult, and whilst I understand the objections from the neighbours, we have considered all the impacts and consider them all to be satisfactory. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Now, I'm aware at this stage we don't have a seconder yet for the proposal. So is there a seconder for refusal?
Oh, not for refusal.
I'll second it, Chairman.
Okay, Councillor Payne, second it. Councillor Shopland, you indicated to
this
speak
is
again.
information, not another speech. Mr. Chairman, I suspect that the lane belongs to the Lord of the Manor, the Elton family, because they own that land in that area. You will not prove it because conveniently they lost all their deeds in the fire, which makes it difficult to pin things on them at times. But I expect that who owns the lane. But I would just say this: if you tarmac that lane, you will send an awful lot of water down a very steep slope in some of the storms we've had, which will completely flood the backs of Ops Road houses, which are below the road level. And part of the reason I suspect it's been left as it is because a rough surface like that absorbs surface water. It doesn't necessarily send it all down. So be careful when you think about tarmacking it. You might produce yourself a very big liability.
Michelle.
Sharon.
Councillor Richard Kent has asked if he can speak before summing up, and I'm not sure Councillor Cherry would like to speak as well.
Okay.
I'd
I
like
think
to speak as well, Chairman, if
Okay,
you don't mind.
okay, yeah, got your name. Richard.
Ken.
Richard Kent, yeah, sorry.
Chairman, yes, it was just, I was keen just to try and be clear about the reasons for refusal for Councillor Cherry summed up, so we're clear what we're voting on. I think that the essence of what's being said is that the scale, design and form of the development has an adverse impact on the conservation area and the setting of listed buildings, and then the various components that Councillor Cherry referred to are all elements of that or symptoms of that, but that's the overriding reason for refusal. And I think that's the reason for refusal that the vote should be on.
Okay, Councillor Westwood.
Yeah, I'm trying to nibble away at this update sheet and the indication by the applicants that they would be willing to upgrade the lane if they were able to. I'm just wondering, can we put a note alongside the? I know it as has been pointed out, it wouldn't have any legal basis, but I think if the applicants have expressed their willingness, then I think we should at least, as an authority, take it up, and we should, if necessary, examine whether we can adopt it. I'm aware there are a couple of there's sort of precedents or similar situations in North Somerset where developments have taken place and the road lanes have been left in a half-made state, and that developers have said, well, it'll be okay, we'll chuck down a bag of gravel occasionally, and the thing has deteriorated. Like I said, there'll be a considerable number of movements of traffic onto this lane which aren't there at the moment if this development goes ahead. And I think we should grasp the offer from the applicant to at least try and make up the lane. As Councillor Shopland pointed out, there might be a lot of water running down it. The applicants are already committed to putting in drains, and those will have to be of a proper adoptable standard. So, like I say, I think there is some room for something here, rather than just leaving it as it is, a half-made track, basically.
So, Richard, could we add a note along those lines?
Chairman, yes, I'm sure we can.
Okay. Michelle, before I invite Councillor Cherry to sum up, is there anybody else waiting to speak?
Simon Exley has indicated he'd like to speak. Oh.
Right. Okay, Simon.
Sorry, Chairman. Just to go back, we've got the gist of the refusal reasons, but again, just to remind members that the presumption that they've got to consider about the lack of 5-year housing land supply is something that they've got to give great weight to. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Cherry, can you sum up, please?
Right. Essentially, this is in the heart of a conservation area, although it's a brownfield site, and it is directly above a listed building terrace. And the fact is, as people have mentioned, water pours down that unmade road. And what all the residents are deeply concerned about is the idea that there's going to be machinery, heavy machinery, moving about on this site and using that public access and making it deteriorate still further. As well as this, something I missed out, that green lane is significant because, in fact, residents in Copse Road, some of them pay ground rent, and I have been exploring this with Nicholas Brain, because essentially they may have rights over that green passageway, and at the moment it's not owned by the site owners. So with the works that they are envisaging, it's going to end up damaging incredibly that green space, and that's only it's under 2 meters to the listed building terraces. So they're retaining walls. So that is why everybody is so anxious. The building works are literally so close to a listed terrace, we're as well as the removal of a massive amount of asbestos, which is the other thing, right by people's open gardens. And so I would still say that this should be refused because the buildings, it's too dense. There's it's in a conservation area, and it needed to be of a higher standard. And it actually says in our policy on infill, it says that we've got to take, it needs to be sensitive and adopt high quality design. And I would still say, you know, we're not using the bricks from the original buildings. We're using modern materials. There are all sorts of reasons why this proposal should be rejected, but principally because it's going to reduce the quality of living standards for the neighbours. It's not sensitive enough for being a conservation area, and it impacts the setting for the listed buildings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sue, please can you conduct the roll call vote?
Thank you, Chairman. Taking the vote in alphabetical order, each councillor will be confirming that they have heard the whole of the debates unless they state otherwise. The proposal by Councillor Cherry is for refusal. When I say for, it will be for refusal. Against will be against refusal. Councillor Bryant.
For.
Councillor Cherry.
For.
Councillor Cole.
Against.
Councillor Crew.
Against.
Councillor Crockford-Hawley.
Against.
Councillor Cronley.
Against.
Councillor Leigh Morgan.
Against.
Councillor Parker. I'll come back to
He's
Councillor
had to
Parker.
leave. Sorry, no, he's definitely had to leave.
All right, thank you. Councillor Payne.
For.
Councillor Shopland.
Against.
Councillor Solomon.
You're muted, Mike.
Against.
Thank you, Councillor Solomon. And Councillor Westwood.
Against.
Chairman, that's 3 for refusal and 8 against refusal.
Thank you. So we need a new proposal, perhaps from one of the Cleveland members.
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have a seconder?
Who was that?
I second that.
Okay. Any debate?
Yeah, could I just say that I would like a note in accompanying the approval, stating that the council is very interested in the view that the applicants would seek to improve the surface of the entire lane, and that we would be keen to see this happen, and that we would, as a council, explore the possibility of adopting the lane if that were to be possible.
Okay. Michelle, any other comments?
No other comments in chat, Chairman.
Councillor Shopland, do you want to sum up?
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Chairman. I was going to alter Councillor Westwood's proposal slightly, that we ask the developer to develop the lane if it is possible, with a view to adoption by the council. That sums it up very simply.
Are you okay with that, Councillor Westwood?
Yeah, why not? We've had enough falling out this afternoon, haven't we? One way or another. Okay.
Chairman, could I just say, and it would be with the additional condition number 23 about a photographic survey.
Okay.
Thank you.
So approval has been moved and seconded. Sue, please conduct the vote.
Oh, sorry. Chairman, Richard Kent would like to speak, sorry.
Oh, Richard, sorry.
Sorry, Chairman, just a very quick comment about adoption in the notes. We just need to be clear that we can't necessarily require the lane to be adopted. We can require it to be maintained, built to an adoptable standard, but we'll find the right sort of words. But we just want to be clear that we can't promise that it would be adopted.
Okay.
No, but we will explore. We'll explore the possibility of it being adopted.
Mr. Chairman, I think I said with a view to possible adoption. That commits us to nothing. Commits no one to anything.
Right. Okay, back to you, Sue, for the vote.
Thank you, Chairman. The proposal is for approval. When I ask you if you are voting for it, before approval, and against would be against. And I would also be asking you to confirm that you've heard the whole of the debate. Councillor Bryant.
Abstain.
Councillor Cherry.
Against.
Councillor Cole.
For.
Councillor Crewe.
For.
Councillor Crockford-Hawley.
For.
Councillor Connolly.
For.
Councillor Leigh Morgan.
For.
Councillor Parker, is he still left? Right.
Yeah, he's not coming back.
Thank you. Councillor Payne.
Against.
Councillor Shopland.
For.
Councillor Solomon.
For.
And Councillor Westwood.
For.
Chairman, that's 4 for approval, 2 against and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much.
So, sorry, Sue, I think you said 4 for approval. I think you mean 8.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
I think I got my 4 fours. 8 for approval. Sorry about that, Chairman.
Okay.
8 for approval, 2 against and 1 abstention.
That's carried. Thank you. Item 8, application 19/P/2313/FUL, demolition of garage, Woodlands Road, Clevedon. Simon.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to again draw members' attention to the update sheet where we've received an additional 13 letters of objection, and with the numbers in the committee report, that makes a total of 27 letters of objection. The plan shows in purple where the buildings are that will be demolished, as well as the photographs of the site. Since members have voted to accept the redevelopment of the site, this goes on from that decision. Again, I would ask that if members are minded to approve it, they add an additional condition 6, which is for photographic survey of the buildings. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Cherry.
Hello. Just to say, is it possible to put down extra conditions about the use of the passage, because of all the risks to all the people on this edge, because they'll literally get locked in. They won't be able to get out. There's lots of houses there. I'm very concerned, and also about people being trapped, and the fact that lane is so damaged. I'm really concerned about it. Is there any way that we could make the developers stick to their works on the site rather than going down the public pathway because of the risk to all the traffic that will be going back and forth from the businesses?
Chairman, it's Simon here. If I can just speak to
sure.
The proposed condition 3 is for the submission of a demolition management plan to be submitted and approved by us, and that looked at how they would control the demolition works, including access to the site, and how the demolition will be organised. So those issues can be covered by that proposed condition, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Cherry, are you going to make a proposal? Silence.
You're muted, Councillor Cherry.
Sorry. Given that you've approved the planning, the development, my concern is just that this is done in the safest possible way, because we're in a pandemic. It's very, very difficult for people to know who to complain to, how to get hold of people. You know, for example, there'll be removal of asbestos, and I want there to be maximum protections for the residents around this development, and specifically as well the any security provisions around the site need to be enough to enable people to get out. That's what I'm mainly concerned about, and for the asbestos removal to be done in a really safe manner.
Okay, so what are you proposing?
That can there be a note on the approval that the application, the management plan has to go. Oh, hang on. I'm just. Who would it just go to building regs? The building people.
Chairman, if I may, the demolition management plan covers a whole range of things as set out on page 7 of the papers. It's a whole host of mechanisms to control the construction process. You can't make an omelette without breaking eggs, so there will be some limited disruption, but the first condition is to make the best of that. And I think all the points that Councillor Cherry has referred to will be covered in that. Asbestos removal is covered by separate legislation, I think has already been explained. So I think you can be as comfortable as you can be that this is addressed.
The reason I'm concerned is because we're in this COVID time, it's less easy to get hold of public authorities like the Environment Protection Agency or the HSE. And is it possible that we can actually get approval through North Somerset Council building team before anything?
Councillor Cherry, are you moving approval or not?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Well, no.
Chair, can we?
Okay.
Chair, can I move for approval of this, and let's just get on with it. We've already approved the bill. Can I move for approval of this?
Yes, and I will second that. Okay. Right,
Chairman,
Michelle.
Councillor Solomon has asked to speak.
I think he's just spoken, I think.
And Councillor Cronley.
Yes, I just spoke. I just wanted to get on, and we've already approved the previous application, and I just wanted to move on and take a vote on this one, please.
Exactly.
I vote that we approve.
Councillor Cronley.
No, I was basically saying the same thing, but Mike beat me to it, so that's me out.
Okay. Michelle, anybody else?
Nothing further in the chat, Chairman.
So the proposal is for approval. Sue, please conduct the roll call vote.
Thank you, Chairman. This is for item 8. The proposal is for approval. When I say for, you will be voting for approval. Against will be against approval. And when I ask you to vote, you'll be confirming that you have heard the whole of the debate. Councillor Bryant.
For.
Councillor Cherry.
For.
Councillor Cole.
For.
Councillor Crew.
For.
Councillor Crockford Hawley.
For.
Councillor Cronley.
For.
Councillor Lane Morgan.
You're muted, John.
You're muted, John.
Put your thumb up, lad.
I'll come back to Councillor Leigh Morgan.
He's got his thumb up.
He's put his hand up.
And we lip read the 4, so it was a 4.
Councillor Parker's left. Councillor Payne.
4.
Councillor Shopland.
How could I not support Councillor Solomon? 4.
Councillor Solomon.
4.
Councillor Westwood.
4.
That's carried, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Item 9, 20/P/0725/FUL, retrospective application for change of use, care home to HMO. Simon.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can just draw members' attention to the update sheet, it's just that we found additional information about the adjoining property, which is immediately to the north, the other half of the semi, number 13. That property was previously used as a doctor's surgery. Planning permission was granted last year for the change of use of the doctor's surgery to a C2 residential institution as a 10-bedroom registered therapeutic nursing home. And that approval was in November last year. And the building's being converted to a nursing home at present. Just whilst we're looking at the location plan, if you look immediately down to the south, the big building just above Quantock Road and the corner is Barrow Lodge, which is divided into 21 flats. Could we have the next slide, please, Richard? The red line again shows the existing block plan, and on the left and on the right is the proposed block plan, which shows minimal change. The next slide, please. This plan shows the proposed changes to the ground floor layout, and on the right the first floor layout, and shows which rooms will be used for a communal lounge on the left hand side on the ground floor. Can we have the next slide, please? And this shows on the second floor that 2 bedrooms will be and bathroom provided on the second floor. Next slide, please. It's the next slide coming up, Richard. Thank you. This shows the property, the front of it. The silver car is in the parking area for it. If you look on the left-hand side where the glazed canopy is, that's number 13, which was used as a doctor's surgery. Could we have the next photo, please? That's taken in the other direction, which shows number 13 closest to you on the left, which is being converted to a nursing home. Number 15, the HMO is on the right, and then behind them is the red brick building of Barrow Court, which is the block of flats. Can we have the next slide, please? Now this plan shows in the red is where number 15, the application site is, and the blue dots show registered HMOs in the area. Now, if you look to the south, there are 4 HMOs to the south. There are 3 further to the east on the other side of Drove Road, and then there's a group to the north. Now, the group to the north, the majority of those, 14 in all, are within the area of restricted subdivision, which is north of Clarence Road North. that area, we have a particular policy that restricts the subdivision of family houses to HMO or other uses to retain them. But that policy does not apply outside the area of restricted subdivision. So we need to assess this policy as it described in the report under policy DM39, where we will consider proposals for HMOs, and the report explains that because there aren't other HMOs in the immediate area of the application site, then it's considered that it will not have a harmful impact on the character and living conditions of the area or the residents of the area or adjoining properties. The report also explains that this application is retrospective and the use has been in use for 5 years or so. Now, we've checked the council's records and the planning department's received no complaints about the use of the property as an HMO in the last 5 years, and the housing department has also not received any complaints about its operation. We consider that the retrospective application will not adversely affect the character of the area. We've also received comments from the police who are not objecting to it, and the housing officer considers it's acceptable and there isn't problems with it, and it is a registered HMO. Whilst I certainly understand the comments that have been made by the residents and by the speaker, if you look at the comments are concerned about some type of users that may be related to, the mention was of drug and alcohol. However, we have no control over who occupies an HMO. It could be people who are not there with particular problems, but people who are looking for housing. If there had been problems associated with the past and complaints about its operation, I'm sure we would have got complaints from residents about it. One of the other complaints and objections that residents have made is about the lack of car parking. The photographs that Richard put up with the slides showed one car that was there. That was taken in the middle of the day. I've been down there at different times of days and I haven't seen a parking problem. And since the property is in operation, I think we would have seen if there was a problem with car parking in the area. This type of use tends to be affordable to people who can't afford high rental, and usually they're people who don't own cars and car ownership is low. And I have to say that as a car driver, when I went to have a look at it, I didn't have any problems finding a parking space in the area or outside the site. So the last thing is that the council's lack of a 5-year housing land supply is a consideration, because this would count in terms of one dwelling towards it, and that is a material consideration that members need to give weight to if they're minded to refuse it. So what I'm just saying, summing up, is that this as a retrospective application has been in operation for 5 years and any complaints about it. So if members consider it's unacceptable, the onus would be on the authority to demonstrate that it causes harm. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Payne.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Clarence Park is a registered historic park, which is in the Great Western Conservation Area, the White Cross character area, and the houses immediately around Clarence Park were originally very large Victorian houses, which were subsequently converted, either divided into smaller flats or converted into old people's homes. There are also a few 20th century purpose-built blocks of flats, 1960s, 1970s style. There are a couple of houses in Clarence Road East, but there's very few. So generally, this sort of housing that is there has attracted older people and elderly people, and that has led to a very distinctive character in the area. It is a lot more sedate and genteel than most of the town of Weston, and is quite unique in that way, the character of the area. And the park is also quite calm and serene compared to other parks around Weston. So the whole ambience of the area, the feeling is like that. Predominantly old people, or older people. But this character seems to be changing now with these developments. This is a retrospective application, as has been said, and so it's been here for a little while, and it's showing to be part of the change to this character, this particular feeling to the area. Now we've been told that there aren't any other HMOs in the immediate area, and yet, if you look at that map that was put up before, it didn't really have a scale on it, but I can tell you that something like 8 of those other HMOs were within 5 minutes walk of this one. So it's not really the case to say that there aren't any others within the area. But it's not just the HMOs really, it's also the other more specialised care units that are popping up. Up to now, the care homes have been pretty regular old people's homes, but now we're getting more specialised ones, such as this one that's being converted next door, which is predominantly going to be for people with mental health issues and so on. So it's the cumulative effect, really, of the various vulnerable people all being placed together in this one location that seems to be changing the character of the area. Now, it's very important that we care properly for these vulnerable people, or different vulnerable people. But the concern that people have is that having these very different vulnerabilities altogether can cause conflict, which is not good for the people we're trying to care for, it's not good for the neighbours, and it's not really very good for the area. So yes, that's the concern, is that we're changing the character of the area. Now, policy DM39, which is set out in the officer's report, specifically indicates that HMOs should not be allowed where they're changing the character of the area, and it shows the 4 tests that are required for DM39. Now, I believe this application does breach those, or 3 of those tests. It is harmful to the character of the area, and the cumulative effect contributes to an unacceptable change in the balance of types of properties. And the last point there is that parking has to meet the council's parking standards, and that is specifically set out in policy DM39. So I just think it's just doesn't make sense on the one hand to have that specifically stated in DM39, but then say that parking standards shouldn't apply to HMOs. So if we want to comply with DM39, then we have to stick with the parking standards. Now, if we look at the parking standards SPD, yes, it doesn't specifically mention HMOs, but then it doesn't mention houses or flats. It just refers to general residential. But where it is specific in the SPD is that it says it applies to all development, including change of use. The SPD also states that properties need spaces for visitors, and I would say that in a case like this, that would include support workers and the like, and it also calls for an adequate area for loading and deliveries, which is not provided at all by this proposal. Now, to comply with the parking standards, each single bedroom residential unit, where there are 2 or more units, should have 1.5 parking spaces per unit. So for this development of 10 units, that should be 15 spaces. 15, but we've only got 3. That's not slightly under the standard, that's only 20% of what is required. And it says in Principle 5 of the parking standards that even when there are exceptional circumstances and we agree to have lower than the normal, there should still be a minimum of 1 space per dwelling, an absolute minimum of 1 space per dwelling. So that's 10 spaces absolute minimum. And it also states that most residents will own a private car. So I don't think that we should waive that just because it's an HMO. So yeah, I think it's vitally important in this area in particular that we stick to the parking standards. This is an area which does get a lot of parking from visitors to the town, people accessing the park, people accessing the beach and the seafront, and people who park to walk into town to avoid the parking charges in town. One final point is that it's been said that this will contribute to the housing requirement of the council, but it will contribute only one unit, whereas a site of this size should really be contributing several. I would have said. So I think that's a bit of a bogus argument. So the neighbours are opposed to this. The town council opposed it, and I think we should oppose it too for those reasons. So I would like to propose that we refuse the application as it's contrary to DM 39. As it's harmful to the established character of the area, and also because it fails to comply with the parking standards.
Okay. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. My first reaction seeing this application was... Is that Simon's dog? Was why was this discovered and addressed 5 years after it was set up? I mean, what was happening with this property that it's been in multiple occupancy for 5 years before, I don't know what led to this retrospective application. But having said that, I went round there at lunchtime today to have a look at it and to speak to people. And spoke to some of the immediate neighbours, and I was quite surprised that the majority took the attitude that, well, people have got to live somewhere, although some did express the concern that if there was ever a problem with this property, they don't know who the landlord is and wouldn't know how to contact them. So I think that if this application goes through today, I'd like to see a condition included that the landlord does make his conductability to the immediate neighbours, not just to the two people either side, but a little bit further away than that. The residents are, as Councillor Payne said, largely elderly, and but number 13 is currently empty. I think that was the doctor's surgery, and is being done up for use as a house for teenagers and young adults who are not able to live independently and will have a sort of supervisor living on site. This particular property, though, it just had one black bin on the forecourt, and there were no cars there at all. I'm used to seeing a multitude of bins and bits of rubbish and so on out front of some of these buildings used in this way. But I was very impressed with the neatness of the site. And also, I consider that so many houses in Weston are neglected because the landlords just takes the money that they're getting, particularly in an HMO, and don't plough any of it back into the premises. That was not obvious with this particular one. So I think that the distribution of HMOs that we saw on the map earlier shows that there's 24 properties in this area, and I'd like some sort of assurance that that number won't be increasing in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle.
James Wigmore would like to speak, Chairman.
James.
Yes, hello. Yeah, I'm lead transport planner for development management. I've just been having a few IT issues, so if I drop out, apologies for that. I'll try and bring back in. So I was just going to mention that, yes, we don't currently have a parking standard for HMOs, but we have a draft parking standards policy that we're working on, and that requires 1 space per 2 bedrooms. So that would require 5 parking spaces for this type of development. And where that can't be met, we would look to whether those spaces could be accommodated on the road outside. And I have been to the site, and I've looked on aerial photos, and it is one of the easier places in that part of Weston to park. So we would have difficulty in refusing it on under provision of parking. And also, I'm not sure what the previous use was, but there may have been an under provision related to that. If it, say, was flats before, it may have had an under provision of parking anyway. So I don't think we should be pushing the parking as a reason for refusal.
So at this stage, can I ask if there's a seconder?
Chair. Simon Exey would like to speak as well, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle. Sorry, Chairman, if I can just up from that. There are 2 things. First of all, it was previously a nursing home, so it wasn't a private dwelling beforehand. So you're talking from moving from a nursing home to an HMO. And just following on the point that James has made about the parking, is that, as I said, it's retrospective. It's been there for 5 years. I think we'd have had complaints if there was parking problems. And if you were to refuse planning permission on parking grounds, I don't think we will be successful, because we would have to demonstrate that there was a problem with parking in the area. As I said to you myself, that I haven't had any problem parking there, and the times that I've been and what was shown on the photographs have not showed a parking problem. So I just wanted to point that side of things out. And in terms of the issue of the 5-year land supply, I'm afraid that the regulations say that it will only count as a 1 dwelling in terms of meeting that 5-year land supply. But it is a material consideration we have to take into account. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. So, is there a second?
Councillor Caroline Cherry has requested to speak as well. Sorry.
Councillor Cherry.
Sorry, just to say I'd second Robert's.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Michelle, anybody else wishing to comment?
And Councillor Cronolly, Chairman.
Councillor Cronolly.
So yeah, I thought I would start the opposite argument. So look, I'll cut to the chase. There's been no complaints in the last 5 years. It doesn't impact the character. It used to be a care home. So the short answer is the short question is what's the problem? So kind of the objection I've read seemed to suggest it's more about the people living there than the actual property itself. And the people living there are those getting support with assisted drug and alcohol. Now, I won't go into my family circumstances, but that's a tad offensive that's the objection. So I can't see any reason to reject this.
Thank you. Simon, do you want to make any more comments?
Well, yes, I think that in some ways sums it up, that we don't know who the occupiers are, and there is a need to provide a range of accommodation. The council has other policies about having mixed use communities where you have a variety, and whilst I appreciate the comments that Councillor Payne made about this being a sedate area, we also have to look at having a mix of types of housing and a mix of uses. I can tell you that we have successfully refused HMOs in the area of restricted subdivision because of the quantity and number of such uses in that particular area. But this area is different. It doesn't have the same concentration. So, and as I said, it's been there 5 years. So if members are minded to refuse it, the onus is on us to prove that there is substantial harm caused by that use. Thank you, Chairman.
Michelle, anybody else?
And Councillor Crawford-Hawley is requested to speak as well, Chairman.
Councillor Crawford-Hawley.
Thank you, Chairman. Two aspects. First, of course, this is a very emotive issue, and I have to ask myself, if I were living next door to the planning application, what would my feelings be? And it would be very much against granting this application. But of course, that's utterly irrelevant. That's the problem. It's already here. It has no record of poor management. I don't agree with the officers when they say that there is not a concentration in the area, because that is determined by what we consider the area to be. And I think Councillor Payne has summed that up correctly. In the area, yes, we do have a fair number of these sorts of places which are not wholly popular within the neighbourhood, but they are there, and it is part of the housing requirement, and much of it is there because of the lack of successive governments to create suitable situations where we can cope with these sorts of requirements. But as much as I would like to vote against this application, I am trying very hard to find a planning reason why I can't. I can find every emotive reason. I can even find a few prejudicial reasons. But can I find substantive planning reasons? And I'm not sure I can. So as much as I would like to support my colleague, I have to put the planning hat on and vote for it, reluctantly.
Michelle.
No further comments in chat, Chairman.
In which case, Councillor Payne, do you wish to sum up?
Yes, I just want to say briefly that it's really about the changing character of the area. I'm not targeting individuals who might live in this type of property or anything like that. I just want everybody to be housed well, so that it doesn't cause problems between neighbours and that sort of thing. I agree that we do need mixed uses. We need mixed housing types in areas, but I feel this area isn't a mixed use. There's not mixed housing types. There's certainly a lack of family housing in this area, for example. And as far as having no complaints about parking, well, you should try being the councillor for Central Ward. You know, I get complaints about parking every single day. So yeah, I just think that we should refuse this because of these changes and the problems it is causing.
Thank you. So we have a proposal for refusal. Sue, please conduct the roll call vote.
Thank you, Chairman. I will be taking, for each vote taken, that the councillor will be confirming that they have heard the whole of the debate. The proposal is for refusal. When I say for, it will be for refusal. Against will be against refusal. Councillor Peter Bryant.
Chairman, I must first give you my apology and that to the committee. At the beginning of this particular item, I should have declared a non-pecuniary interest, which I now do, and I shall not be taking part in the vote.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Bryant. Councillor Cherry.
For.
Councillor Cole.
Abstain.
Councillor Crew.
Again.
Councillor Crockford-Hawley?
Against.
Councillor Cronolly?
Against.
Councillor Lane-Morgan?
Abstain.
Councillor Payne?
For.
Councillor Shopland?
Against.
Councillor Solomon?
Against.
And Councillor Westwood?
Against.
Chairman, that's 2 for refusal, 6 against refusal and 2 abstentions and 1 not taking part.
Okay, thank you. So we need another proposal.
I'd like to propose that this is passed.
Okay, do we have a seconder?
Yes.
Okay. Any debate? No, so Sue, please conduct the roll call vote.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Cherry? Sorry, Councillor Cherry, I'll just clarify it's for approval. So when I say for, it will be for approval, against will be against approval.
Abstain.
Councillor Cole?
For.
Councillor Crewe?
For.
Councillor Crockford-Hawley?
For.
Councillor Cronolly?
For.
Councillor Lane-Morgan?
For.
Councillor Payne?
Against.
Councillor Shopland?
For.
Councillor Solomon?
For.
Councillor Westwood?
For.
Chairman, that's carried with 8 for approval, 1 against, 1 abstention and 1 non-voting.
Thank you. Item 10, planning appeals. Richard.
Chairman, I've got nothing to add to the report other than the councillors may or may not be aware the Bristol Airport appeal was received at the end of last week, and that process has now started. I can happily give councillors a bit more information on process if they want it, but I appreciate it's late, so happy to be guided by you.
Okay. Michelle, anybody wishing to speak? No? So that is just for noting. Moving on to item 11, there's no urgent business, so I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much.